Hello there, Brian. Michelle here. So, looking over your entire paper, I just wanted to say first off, I apologize. I know it looks like I have written a lot of stuff. I am an editor first, and because of that, I tend to really try to explain why I'm revising something so that I don't just change something, but that you understand why I'm suggesting a change. It's just kind of how I work. So overall, I feel like your your introduction, so your title and whatnot, is direct. Teaching with Google Classroom, I know exactly what to expect. But starting kind of out of the gate, I would say that with your instructional problem, I don't really see what the problem is. So with an instructional problem, if I'm looking at this as a viewer, I should be able to understand the exact reason, perhaps, that you're creating this training, right? So maybe you could share about what's happening. Is this because of COVID-19? If it is, that's a perfect example for you to share. COVID-19 has happened and it is causing issues with teachers who have now had to leave their actual classrooms in favor of online training and online education. Now their classroom has to be online. They have to do this, and this, So sharing specific examples helps your viewer connect more specifically to what it is you're talking about, so they want to stay in this and hang in there with you as you're explaining these details. Also, for your intended audience, perhaps you could share what the teachers are going through. So as I kind of said above, so by moving to the online environment, now you can focus on how the teachers might be feeling, how chaotic that feels. I know my daughter's teacher has mentioned many times on their FaceTimes that she's struggling because she's not in her classroom anymore. She's not with her kids, and that's such an emotional turmoil as well as physical. Like, we're at home now, we're not even in our environment that's comfortable and we're used to it. So mentioning those things again to tie emotion and tie the truth of what's happening, that way again it shows a reason for why you're doing this, instead of it just being, we're just training random people on Google Classroom. So it just connects it a little bit better. For Bloom's taxonomy, as well as the ABCD method, it mentioned that words like understand and learn aren't the strongest words, as they can't really be measured. So you could consider choosing a better word, discover or something along those lines, just something a little different to connect it a little bit better. So for your learning outcomes as well, maybe try making your second one a little bit more concise. Being that it's 2 sentences, you really could turn it into one. So learners will understand how to set up and grade assignments for students on Google Classroom, access Google Classroom on other devices, as well as discover how to support students with problems with Google Classroom. So doing that made it to where it's all one sentence and it's not as repetitive and it's more concise. But with that being said, I am a little concerned that that's a lot in a single outcome. So you may want to simplify it even further to kind of say all of that in in one sentence. I don't know if there's a good way to do that, but that would be my suggestion. As for data planning, I looked over your assessment, and though in general I think it's a good idea of what you have in there, the kinds of questions, but I would warn you or caution you a little bit that many of your questions can be answered with a yes or no. So you may want to change how you have worded them. I make a few suggestions here on the side. Many of your primary questions could be slightly reworded. So instead of saying, I know how to help students online, you could instead say, I am comfortable helping students online. So that way it moves better with your scale, since you have a scale system, because you need to think of your questions of, okay, does this question have a scale? Can I say I disagree or strongly agree or middle agree on my question? If the answer is no, then you probably need to try rewording it. And I'd say for most of your questions, they probably need something along those lines. Also, some of the grammar that was used is not totally accurate. So, one of your sentences, you said, I've been in an online class. So, to try rephrasing it as well as rephrase it as the kind of question that would be helpful, you need to change it a little bit as well. So, maybe changing it to, I have been in an online class and I understand the dynamics. Now, the question has gone somewhere and it follows your scale. So, just following that, I think, will be very helpful to you. For your SME checklist, you mentioned that you have someone you will consult with, but at this point, I think having a specific would be beneficial to you. You could even have multiple people. So you could even have someone who is a Google specialist or Google Classroom specialist, as well as maybe finding a teacher who has been teaching online for a long time. There are teachers that do Connections Academy online and K-12 online. Those could be great people to use and utilize as an opportunity to ask them questions. I'm sure they would be a fountain of knowledge for how to create a classroom that's engaging still and feels comfortable to kids and is warm still. Like, especially if you think of those K-6 kids who are very used to warm environments and are now in their own homes learning on a computer, asking these people, how do you make it interactive? How can you make this connected to your students? So those are the kinds of questions you could ask as well once you have a specific person in mind or a couple of specific people. On my SME checklist, I think I have 4 people that I'm wanting to ask questions. So it's okay to have a few. Overall, for your Addy design, that looks good. Something I'm noticing kind of throughout, though, is you have sources that you mention, but you don't actually cite them. You don't have in-text citations. So you just want to make sure that you focus back to that, because you don't want to be hit with something saying you didn't cite sources when you do have sources below. So maybe try looking to Owl per Dom online. They're great. That's what I usually use to cite my sources, and they usually tell you how to do in-text citations, so that could help you. Definitely try doing that in here. I noticed there wasn't any in-text citations. Also, something I noticed kind of throughout, I tried to fix it for you, but I might not have gotten all of them. You had different colors throughout, like there was gray and then there was black. So I tried to change it all to black. So just make sure that that is there throughout everything. For your first objective here, you say learners will learn how to set up. Are these the teachers who will later work with students online, or are you referring to the students? Maybe just clarifying that. So in my framework that I'm working on, I'm working with teachers. So because of that, I said participating teachers. So that way it's specific and different between teachers and the students and the instructor of the training. So that's just what I happened to use that helped. I tried to fix this sentence for you. It's a little confusing because this way now we know exactly what you're saying, tools that will be used. So ebooks as reference for students and teachers, YouTube videos, and whatnot. So something that was a bit of a concern was I noticed you rely heavily on YouTube videos, which could be okay, except if we're looking at this from a client standpoint. As a client, I might ask myself, well, how is this better, this training better than just sending someone to YouTube to look it up? So showing your credibility through other things. So connecting the videos to something. So offering discussions, offering activities. Even though you're doing a virtual presentation, it's okay if there's multiple people in that virtual presentation, like virtual meetings. There's lots of those. So you could do something like that. So that way people are still connecting. You can still bounce ideas off of one another. And that might help you so that this feels a little stronger. Because right now it really just feels like it's a YouTube tutorial. And I just don't know if that's totally the same sort of thing that we're fully going for. It just doesn't feel like there's a trainer really doing anything yet. It's just a facilitator. So maybe having your trainer actually interacting would be better for your client and for your overall training. For your interactions, I sort of mentioned the same thing. Perhaps include opportunities for the learners to engage with one another during the training. So maybe just have it as like a Google Meet so that multiple people could be meeting. Also, I noticed your objective 2, your content was basically the exact same as the previous. So just make sure that that there's variations, that there's different things that are happening, because again, if it's the same thing over and over, then the client may ask, well, how is this different? So showing the value behind it can be very important. So for your time, I noticed in the previous one, you said 2 hours, and then this one is 3 hours. I'm just a little confused on how you're coming up with the timing for these. I know that for mine, I broke down how much time every single activity would take, and that's how I came up with my time. So perhaps go through, like if you have YouTube videos, go through how long every video is and say, okay, so this video is 10 minutes, this video is 15, this video is this. This discussion will take 10 minutes, things like that, just to connect. Also, I think your project overview might be in the wrong place since we've moved things around. I believe this actually goes up back near the top under the new objectives. For your sample content, I looked over your assessment. I noticed that you used a lot of true, false, and yes, no questions. And as far as I know, I think we're supposed to be using open-ended questions. So maybe just try and alter how you're asking the questions. Even try Googling, open-ended questions for this sort of thing. And that might guide you to the kind of questions that you could ask that could be better for you. Also, just make sure you cover all of these details in your video so that it's connected. Also, I noticed you do have in-text citations here, so that's great. So that's very good. One thing I would say is once you've already mentioned it, you don't need to say it, like keep doing it over. A lot of times if you introduce it, so up here say, according to Wright, in parentheses, 2018, bloody, 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 blah. And then down at the bottom after it, you could then say, Wright 2018, something like that. But putting it 3 times might not be necessary, but if you introduce it as like Wright 2018, okay? So anyway, I know that was a lot, and I'm sorry. But I hope that it is helpful. As for your references, I'm once you kind of get some other ideas for like your SME and the content, I imagine your reference list will probably grow a bit. Also, since you copied and pasted these out of from the EBSCO host, you just want to try reformatting it a little bit. I know for mine, I have to do it a little differently. Like you go to home and then you kind of do this. And I think that got rid of, it usually gets rid of it. And you just want to make sure that it lines up with the rest of your text. Everything should still be the same. Everything should still be the correct everything. Okay, there we went. So yeah, you kind of highlight all of this and then you hit highlighter and do that. And that should make it to where that highlight mark is no longer there. All right. Well, thank you so much. I really hope that this is helpful. Again, I'm sorry if this was overwhelming. I know that I tend to have a lot of notes, but I hope that this helps you. If you have any more questions or anything that you feel like maybe I could help you with specifically, please feel free to send me a message. I know we're running into a weekend, but you could totally still message me and I can try and help you out, okay? Thank you so much and have a good night.